All right, so are you ready to dive into some seriously dark waters today?
Always ready to get a little twisted.
Well, good, because we're tackling the Smiley Face Killer Theory.
Ooh, that's a creepy one.
It really is. It makes you think, what if those young men found drowned in rivers, all over the country, weren't just accidents?
Yeah, what if it was something way more sinister?
Like, imagine it's a freezing February night in New York City.
Ooh, I don't like where this is going already.
A college student, Patrick McNeill, disappears after a night out with friends. Weeks later, his body is found in the East River.
Accidental drowning.
Case closed, Greg.
Seems like it, but hold on.
There's more.
Two retired detectives, Kevin Gannon and Anthony Duarte, weren't so sure. They felt like something was off about the McNeill case, like things didn't add up.
What kind of things?
And then they started noticing other cases just like it, all over.
So, not just in New York.
Nope, all across the country. Young men, often athletes, good guys, vanish after a night out, and then weeks later, boom, they turn up drowned in a river. Awful. So alcohol was usually blamed.
Right. Seemed like open and shut cases. But Gannon and Duarte, they started to see a bigger picture. They were connecting the dots.
Yeah.
And it got creepy.
I bet. What did they find?
It wasn't just how the men died, but this weird detail kept popping up near where they found the bodies.
What was it?
Smiley face graffiti.
Okay, well, smiley faces are pretty common.
True. But the number of times it showed up near these drowning victims was a little too freaky to ignore.
Okay, yeah, I see what you mean.
So you see where this is going, right? Welcome to CrimePod Castle's Twisted Crime series. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe.
Don't forget to subscribe.
Exactly. So as Gannon and Duarte dug deeper, they became convinced this wasn't just a bunch of sad accidents. They started to believe it was a network of killers, maybe a huge group working all across the states.
So we've got a possible pattern, this creepy symbol, and now the suggestion of a whole network of killers. What are some of the cases that made them think this?
Well, Dakota James's case is a big one.
Tell me about it.
He was a grad student from Pittsburgh, only 23. Vanished after a night out in 2017. Over a month later, they found him in the Ohio River.
Drowning.
Officially, yes. But Gannon and Duarte were convinced.
Why not?
Well, for one thing, Dakota was a really strong swimmer, so it seemed unlikely he'd just accidentally drown.
Right.
And there were also reports of bruising on his neck, which didn't seem to fit with a normal drowning.
Oh, okay.
And guess what?
Hold on, let me guess. Smiley face.
Bingo. Spray painted near where they found his body.
Man, that's starting to feel more like a pattern than a coincidence.
Right. And then there's the case of Chris Jenkins.
Use that.
He was a student at the University of Minnesota, disappeared back in 2002 after leaving a bar in Minneapolis. They found his body months later in the Mississippi River.
So another drowning.
Yeah, and alcohol was blamed at first, but later they changed it to a homicide.
So even when they thought it was an accident, sometimes they found evidence of foul play.
Yeah, it's wild.
Yeah, it definitely makes things a lot more complicated.
It does. As Gannon and Duarte kept digging, they found tons of cases all over that fit this profile.
How many?
They say at least 40 across 11 states, all young guys, late teens, early 20s, outgoing, last seen leaving a bar or party, and found drowned.
40 cases. Wow.
Right.
Was there anything else linking them? Like anything besides the smiley face and the victim profile?
That's where things get a little murky. There's no physical evidence like DNA tying these cases together.
So how can they be sure?
Exactly. And that's why a lot of law enforcement don't buy the Smiley Face Killer Theory. They say it's all separate incidents, tragic accidents, alcohol involved, and that Gannon and Duarte are just seeing patterns that aren't really there.
So what did the detectives say to that?
Well, they point out that a lot of these victims were found way downstream from where they were last seen. So they argue it doesn't make sense that they just fell in the water and drowned right there.
Yeah, that's true.
And they also say that in some cases, there's stuff missing you'd usually see in a drowning, like no water in the lungs.
Whoa, are they saying these guys were killed somewhere else and then dumped in the water to make it look like an accident?
Exactly. They call it staged drowning.
Chilling.
It really is.
Yeah.
But it would explain why some cases seem like accidents at first, but then don't add up later.
Yeah, but even if that's true, it doesn't explain why. Why would someone, or even a group, target these guys?
That's the million-dollar question.
And that's what we'll be exploring in part 2. Don't miss it.
Okay, so we've talked about the patterns in these deaths, the victims, the smiley face graffiti, but the big question is, why? If there is this group out there going after these young men, what would even be the point?
Yeah, that's what really keeps you up at night with this theory. I
Right.
mean, a single serial killer, you can kind of understand sometimes their twisted motives, But a whole group working together, that's a whole other level of scary.
It's almost like the lack of a motive itself is a motive. Like they want to create fear and chaos by being totally unpredictable.
It definitely plays on our deepest fears. The fear of the unknown, the fear of just being targeted for no reason.
So if we can't rely on the usual ways of profiling killers, what are some ideas people have come up with to try and make sense of all this?
Well, one theory is that it could be a cult, a thrill-seeking cult. They get off on orchestrating these deaths, leaving their little mark. The smiley face becomes their calling card, like a taunt.
I mean, it's a horrifying thought, but it would explain why the victims seem so random. If they're just trying to spread fear, targeting ordinary guys would do that for sure.
And then there's another theory, though this one's a little more out there, that maybe this group has a vendetta against a specific kind of person. You know how a lot of the victims are described as athletic, successful, popular? Maybe the killers resent that?
Almost like, I don't know, a dark version of that incel stuff you see online, where they hate on people they see as having it all.
It's a disturbing parallel, and it's hard to ignore given who the victims are. But again, these are just theories. We can't say for sure.
Of course, but just thinking about these possibilities makes you wonder about the nature of evil, like how darkness can hide in plain sight.
Right. It challenges how we think about safety. Makes you realize that danger could be anywhere and there might not even be a reason for it.
And that's got to be the hardest part for the families of these victims, right? They're not only dealing with the loss, but with this huge mystery that might never be solved.
Absolutely. It makes you think, how do you even begin to cope with that?
It's really unsettling to think about, like how do we wrap our heads around this?
I know, it's tough. It's like we can talk about the patterns and explore different motives, but without any hard evidence, it all just hangs there, between suspicion and not knowing for sure.
So is anyone even looking into it? Like, are there any active investigations trying to prove or disprove this theory?
Well, the thing is, there's no dedicated task force, specifically for the Smiley Face Killer Theory. Yeah, most law enforcement agencies look at each case individually. And even if some think there might be a connection, they're not really putting a ton of resources into it. I mean, it's still seen as a fringe theory by a lot of people.
That's got to be so frustrating for the families.
Oh, absolutely. They want answers, but the authorities aren't really going all in on this theory.
I guess it makes you think about how we handle unsolved mysteries in general, right? Like, you need evidence, you need proof, but there's also the human side of it, Families want closure, and then you have researchers who see things that maybe others don't, and there's just the public's fascination with the unknown.
Exactly. It's a tricky balance. On one hand, you've got the need for solid scientific investigation, forensics and all that, but then you've got the human element, people wanting answers, even if they're hard to swallow.
So where do those two perspectives meet? How do we find that balance between meeting hard proof and the very real need people have for answers?
Communication is key, I think, and collaboration. Everyone needs to be open-minded. Law enforcement should be ready to listen to near information, even if it comes from outside sources. Researchers have to be really careful with their methods, stick to the facts. And families, they need to feel heard. Their voices matter,
That sounds tough to achieve, especially with something as complicated and controversial as this theory.
It is, for sure. But even if the Smiley Face Killer Theory turns out to be wrong, all the questions it brings up are still important, like what is violence? What don't we understand about it? And how do we find meaning in tragedy?
So, like, for us, the average person, how should we approach these kinds of mysteries? All this information, different theories, and then the emotional weight of it all.
I think the most important thing is to be a critical thinker, Question what you read, be aware of biases, and be open to different perspectives. We should always be willing to challenge what we believe, and most importantly, be empathetic to the victims and their families.
It's a good reminder that finding the truth takes time, and sometimes this search is just as important as actually finding the answer. We may never know everything about the Smiley Face Killer Theory, but just looking into it can teach us a lot about ourselves, society, and how complicated humans can be.
Yeah, maybe that's the biggest thing we can take away from this deep dive. Sometimes the scariest mysteries are the ones that give us a glimpse into the darkness we don't understand, a reminder that there are parts of the human mind we may never fully grasp.
So true. Well, thanks for joining us on this journey into the Smiley Face Killer Theory. We hope it's given you more to think about than it's answered, and maybe made you appreciate the importance of critical thinking and the mystery of the human heart. Don't forget to follow and subscribe to CrimePod Castle and our YouTube channel for more deep dives into the dark side of human nature. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and keep questioning everything.